Good afternoon and welcome to Rubbin Minds. My name is Isabella Adediji. Now, last week could be described as a week of two presidents. We started the week with President Muhammadu Buhari, who concluded his 2 terms, and now we're in the administration of President Bola Tinubu. Now, President Bola Tinubu has a lot on his plate to deal with, from a worsening naira to the economy to unemployment to security issues. Indeed, he is faced with a lot of challenges should Nigeria regain her place as the rightful giant of Africa. Now, if you listen to the inauguration speech, you'll know that there are quite a number of solutions the president is putting forward in his agenda of renewed hope. Nigerians should expect to see a unified currency. Nigerians should expect to see 1 million jobs in the digital economy and solutions to the myriad of security challenges, among others. Now, to discuss the BAT agenda, I have with me in the studio Nelson Ekujimi, who is a media personality and a good governance advocate. Welcome to Rubbin Minds.
Thanks very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
And we're also joined via Zoom by a public affairs and policy analyst in the person of Dr. Jide Johnson. Welcome to Rubbin Minds.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be with you, and it's also
good to have you on the program. Now, I'll go straight to our conversation. I mentioned in my introduction about the speech and the renewed hope that Nigerians are expecting, tackling a lot of the challenges the country is facing. What will you say is one thing that resonated with you out of the different things the president put forward in his inauguration speech?
Well, that is a tall order for me, because his speech reverberated around a lot of issues. He talked about security, he talked about power, he talked about the economy, he talked about, running a government of inclusiveness, and, unifying the country. So for me, the president's inaugural address, touched on a lot of issues. But, what resonated with me was that particular area of his speech where he said, "I will not rule over you. I'm going to govern you." And for me, that is the ethos of democracy. That is what democracy symbolizes. It's about discussions, it's about debates, it's about disagreement, to agree and what have you. So for me, the president being a Democrat, has, typified that in his inaugural address, and,
so as Nigerians, we should expect a bottom-up leadership rather than top-down?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, I would like to get your own view. What was the one thing that resonated with you, Nelson, Dr. Jide Johnson?
Well, it is the intention of the president to be the president of Nigeria and not the president of his party. That was also demonstrated by his body language, because if you watch that inaugural speech, he extended his hand to say, "I'll be the president of all, not the president of some." And I hope in actions and in purpose, the president will live up to that. Because what we have seen in the past is for people to want to have a myopic perspective to governance as winner takes all, but rather than to see that once the election has ended, it is governance, and governance includes those that voted for you and those that voted against you, because they are all the citizens of your country and they are all taxpayers. So for me, it was very, very instructive when the president said, "I will be the president of all and not the
president of all."
Inclusive.
So that shows the inclusiveness that this government is promising.
Yeah,
and one would agree that the elections were quite divisive. So this whole uniting of both young and old, of people of different political affiliations, I think is very important if we are to progress in this democracy. Now, I want to move to one of the very touchy subjects of that particular inauguration speech, and it was that declaration by President Tinubu that fuel subsidy is gone. We know that there was no budgetary provision for fuel subsidy. But I believe Nigerians watching the inauguration speech didn't expect to feel the weight of what fuel subsidy is gone, looking at the queues and the exorbitant prices of transportation for some that just came out of the blue. Do you feel that that pronouncement was what led to the chaos, or do you feel that it's perhaps the oil marketers that are taking advantage of a situation to hike the prices, and what can we really expect from the removal of subsidy?
Well, the chaos that followed that announcement is symptomatic of our people's character, where people don't want to, they want to listen only to themselves. They don't want to face the reality of their situation. You recollect when the Petroleum Industry Act became law, we all saw it there when the subsidy regime will end. But sadly, because we still had the reverberating effect of the COVID-19 and its attendant global economic crisis, of which Nigeria was a part and parcel, the PIOA law was extended, and it was that extension that took it to the tail end of the President Muhammadu Buhari's administration. And any discerning analyst or economist or anybody who is interested in a better Nigeria knew for sure that with the education and sensitization of the damage that subsidy has done to the economy, whereby for almost 8 years of President Muhammadu Buhari's administration, he had to rely on loans, and what have you, because generating internally revenue was almost not there because the price of crude oil had fallen, and we're battling with oil theft, which drastically reduced our production. So when people come up and say President Muhammadu Buhari was borrowing money, you need to ask, if the government is not borrowing, and the government cannot raise internally generated revenue because of the, low earning capacity of businesses and individuals, where do you expect him to get funds to run government? Do you expect the money to drop from heaven like manna? Absolutely not, because we are not in the age of manna. So what has happened in this case is the reality of the Nigerian situation, that we all knew this was coming. And Mr. President, being a man of courage, has taken the right decision. So those who are crying foul now, we need to sit down with them and engage them and say, look, this is not about politics. This is about the reality of the Nigerian situation. You recollect.
I'd like you to hold on to that thought. Dr. Jide, for Nigerians who are saying, yes, this is the right step in the right direction in the removal of subsidy, but how do I now afford my transportation fare? Employers that are looking to get their employees in the office and they have to wait 4 hours, 6 hours to get to work, or some just don't have the transport fare, then what happens? Because we know that with the increase in transport, it affects other things like the price of food and basic amenities.
Leadership are elected or appointed to take tough decisions. And it's also the responsibility of the media to hold leadership accountable. I think in the last 8 years, the media has failed Nigerians in not holding the last administration accountable. We pandered a lot to that administration. I hope in the next 8 years we'll not do that, because I see no reason why we'll be borrowing money. If you listen to the explanation Mele Kyari gave with respect to subsidy, the reality is that we have to remove the subsidy, no doubt about that. But Nigerians have been left in the dark. A lot of things have not been explained to Nigerians for Nigerians to come with the reality of things and face it squarely. And also, my colleague was talking about the politics of it. Don't forget that the ruling party now, and since 2015, played politics with the issue of removal of stress subsidy or non-removal of stress subsidy in 2015. So they sowed the seed, and the seed germinated now, and they see that the reality of it is that we must remove this fuel subsidy. So I think what every Nigerian should do and should take note of, we should brace up for the reality of time. And government needs to, when I mean government, I'm talking about the federal government, and I'm not talking about the presidency alone. I'm talking about the National Assembly. By June 13, the National Assembly will be inaugurated. I think the leadership of the National Assembly, the leadership of the president, should engage critical stakeholders. There is the need for an engagement in order to address, to ameliorate the pains pains, because there will be some pains that will come with
And
this.
it's
There's no doubt
interesting you
about that.
say that there will be some pains and we should brace up for the tough realities of this removal of subsidy. But in removing subsidy, I know that the outgoing President Muhammadu Buhari, outgone president, had taken a lot of loans in the last minute. And some of these loans, it was believed, like the World Bank loan, to provide some kind of cushioning effect for the less privileged, with those who don't earn as much, because this effect of the removal of subsidy is definitely going to bite really hard. We're still dealing with high inflation of food. So do we believe that this government, or do you believe that this government will appropriate those funds to the right channels and ensure that those who are at the margins are really protected against these harsh realities?
Absolutely, I have no doubt in my mind that the government would judiciously expend those funds. But also, like my colleague on the other hand said, there's no gain without pain. For a woman to have a baby, she has to suffer the inconvenience of being pregnant for 9 months and all the,
But during that 9 months, you know that this pain is going to come, and say maybe 1 day or 12 hours you're going to have this baby. But what you're telling Nigerians is that this pain might go on for more than 1 day, more than 1 week, more than 1 year.
No, I can't. We as human beings, we cannot predict what the future will be like. We can only forecast. But knowing the antecedents of the new government and calling on Nigerians themselves, like he has rightly said, to hold the government accountable, I have no doubt in my mind that this pain, the gain that will come after this will be worth the pain. Also, you're talking about the $800 billion World Bank loan. Don't forget, the World Bank is not a thrift collector living behind my house. The World Bank is an international agency. And for the World Bank to assess you any of its facilities, there are procedures to be followed. And if the World Bank is giving you extra amount of money, don't forget, the World Bank will not just give you that amount of money and go to sleep. The World Bank also has a monitoring arm of its institution doing that. So, by and large, the essence of the President Muhammadu Buhari's $800 billion loan from the World Bank was to cushion the effect of this fuel subsidy removal, which the new government has inherited. And as we have all come to admit, that government is a continuum. The new government has that responsibility to do justice to that fund. And for me and millions of Nigerians, we are more than confident that the new government will do it. But also, we as citizens, we have a role to play in ensuring that we play our part in holding government accountable.
Definitely agree with you that government needs to be held accountable, and we need to move on to the issue of security. When we look at security, we're looking at protecting the lives of Nigerians, not just Nigerians in a certain part, but across Nigeria and their property. Do you believe that this government, based on the inauguration speech, and also some would say the body language, because we had a president that came in being, I'm from the military, I'm going to tackle Boko Haram, I'm going to tackle insurgency. Do we still see that kind of body language in President Tinubu in tackling the security challenges that Nigerians face?
No, it has nothing to do. You see, sometimes we limit governance to individuals. We personalize governance. And governance is a collective responsibility. Collective responsibility says that you need critical stakeholders. And that was one of the major mistakes in which we made with President Muhammadu Buhari. Everything was limited to him. As if, say, bye-bye, then you give him an overarching personality that is larger than the state. What I think the president should do is to have a collegiate leadership. Collegiate leadership in the sense that involve critical stakeholders in the National Assembly, in the Council of State, and Council of State, traditional rulers, engage critical stakeholders in dealing with this issue of national security, because it's a major problem. If we don't have security, if you can't secure lives and property, then you can't do business. If you can't do business, there can't be economic growth. If there is no economic growth, the standard of living and the cost of living cannot improve. So basically, that issue needs to be addressed. And how do we need to address this? One, the president needs to have an holistic and a nationalistic approach to a security architecture. If you check the security architecture of Buhari's administration, it was too narrow-minded. It was too narrow-minded. It was nepotistic, that they could even speak one language in his National Security Council, and then nothing. They could speak one of the Nigerian national language and not English language, and they will get on with it. I think the president needs to ensure that the security architecture cut across the length and breadth of Nigeria, one. Two, cut across the length and breadth of the age group. You see, you need, in fighting modern day security warfare, you need technology. You need
Dr. Johnson, I'd like to get Mr. Nelson's views on the security architecture, like you rightly pointed out. But also, as you're answering the security question, I'd like to get your opinions on the way forward in the growing Nigeria's GDP. Some will argue that we need to have more investments coming in, create an enabling environment for the private sector, and also for foreign direct investment. So I'd like you to first of all react to the security question, and then let me have your views on growing Nigeria's economy.
On the security question, it is agreed that in addressing our security challenges, we must not only focus on the kinetic approach, but as well as a non-kinetic approach. The last administration has done tremendously well in equipping, and motivating our security agencies. I listened to the chief of air staff, who said, under the President Muhammadu Buhari administration, he procured 49 brand new aircrafts.
But does that translate into Nigerians feeling safe? I mean, we have countries who constantly issue all these travel warnings against Nigeria. Don't go to certain parts of Nigeria. Do you feel safe in the past? Have you felt safe in the past 4 years?
I've felt safe more than ever. I've traveled every part of this country. A lot of those travel advisory are political.
So what about in the southeast, where the economy is being hampered because there's a sit-at-home order? Or what about the headsmen clash with the farmers? You might be in the urban area, but are those people feeling safe?
You see, the headsmen farmers clashes has always been with us. But unfortunately and sadly, we allowed a tiny segment of our society to ethnicize and religionize that issue. It became, if a man fights with a wife, oh, he's a Fulani headsman, he has beaten the wife. If a vehicle gets involved in an accident, oh, he's a Fulani headsman that caused. So we've lost focus of the issues and allow people to lead us all astray. And even when the government came about with the livestock transformation program that would have also aided in providing solutions for the problem, you saw how it was blown out of proportion, how it was made to look like an ethnic issue. And talking about the non-kinetic approach, what we need to do majorly is that in those areas where we have security threats, just like in every part of the country, we should look at those issues that give rise to the insecurity. And those issues are local. A lot of times people make the mistake of ascribing security breaches, resolution to the federal government, as if the states and local government exist not to do anything.
So do you think that state policing is the solution if we're to localize the solution?
There's no one solution to a national problem. There are so many routes to solving it. But most importantly is that the people themselves must desire peace. The people themselves must work for peace. You can't be causing trouble and want to run the security agencies to death over your own, internal crisis. Because the security agencies do not live in your house. They don't know your local problems. It is when you escalate it that they get to know. But when you cause crisis somewhere and you run to your own enclave, and the other part is now retaliating and you are shouting, you have not done well. I recollect, I'm a Yoruba man, for example, and in my own part of the world, they say, it means an elder must not be in a town and the head of the infant becomes turned the other way. We have irresponsible elders that cannot mentor the youths in the right way, elders that when the youths are going astray, they turn the blind eye. And that is why we are in this sorry state. Our elders in various communities have abdicated their responsibility.
So that responsibility of securing the lives and property, in your opinion, is a collective responsibility.
Absolutely. That's
not just the presidency
not
or
just
the
the government,
state.
not even the government. Don't even go to the not that of the government, but the responsibility of all. They're talking about the GDP you talked about, foreign direct investment and local investment. You recollect that the president said he's going to ensure that power becomes accessible and affordable. And he was assuring investors that come and invest your money in Nigeria. Whatever profits you make, you'll be able to, repatriate it to wherever. That is to tell you that the government is going to provide an enabling environment because of the massive investment she has inherited from its predecessor, just like, the liabilities. But going forward, I believe if the necessary infrastructures, the past administration invested heavily in ICT, in digital economy, you collect. And, harnessing all these, features together, I'm very optimistic that in the nearest future, Nigeria will take its rightful place in the Committee of Nations.
I'll move to Dr. Jide Johnson, and I would like to get your view on the importance of having a unified currency. So we've seen the situation where the currency is different from Naira to dollar on the parallel market, the CBN rate, and even earlier in the week, there were some reports that the Naira had been devalued, which the CBN came out to say, no, the Naira hasn't been devalued. How important is it to have that unified rate, which President Bola Tinubu has promised, in ensuring that we have consistent growth in the economy?
I think that I pray and I hope that the president has the political will to see it through. It's only in Nigeria that you see people trade foreign currencies on the streets. It's only in Nigeria that you have two different values for your currency. There's parallel market, and like Nelson said, if this unified, I was happy with that. If this unified exchange rate is followed to the latter, you see that it will encourage foreign investment to come to Nigeria. However,
Dr. Jide Johnson,
grow your economy, it begins at home. Now, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
If the exchange rate, okay, if the exchange rate is unified and it is constant, it does not fluctuate like seconds, then you know that there's confidence in Naira, then there is ability for people to come and invest in Nigeria, and there's also the need for Nigerian local investors to also participate in other businesses abroad. So invariably to contribute to our GDP and as well as our GNP. So I support the president in following through with that. And in doing that, there must be a synergy between our fiscal policy and our monetary policy. In the last 8 years, you discover that central bank will be saying something. Central bank is in charge of the monetary policy. The Ministry of Finance,
definitely there needs to be more synergy, and I believe it's not just between the central bank and the monetary policies. I'm sorry, we'll have to close the conversation now. Thank you very much, Dr. Jide Johnson, a public affairs and policy analyst, and Nelson Ekujimi, media personality and good governance advocate. Thank you both for your contributions on Rubbin Minds. We'll be going on a quick break. Please don't go anywhere.
Don't just stand there teasing me. Now it's time to show and prove. Ready for your action.
You're still tuned in to Rubbin Minds. Now, before the break, we looked at this new administration under President Bola Tinubu and some of the promises that have been made in that inauguration speech, looking at things like the economy, security, the creation of jobs. And while we've heard from the good governance advocate and policy analysts, we want to hear directly from Nigerians. How have they felt in the past 1 week? How has the fuel subsidy, the removal, affected them? And is there a sense of renewed hope which this administration came in promising? To further the conversation, I have with me a journalist in the person of Ifeanyi Okoye. Welcome to Rubbin Minds.
Thank you very much.
And joining us virtually via Zoom, I have a media personality and reality star, Adekunle Olopade. Welcome to Rubbin Minds. Adekunle, can you hear me?
Thank you for having
Okay,
me.
we'll move straight into the conversation. I believe that there was that promise of renewed hope. Are you hopeful in this past 6 days? Do you feel that this government has already begun to deliver on that mandate of renewed hope?
It's too early to pass any verdict on the administration, so we should just watch the policies, whether they match their word with action. Like the president told us, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, that is going to take off subsidy, which we saw from the very first day. But the mode at which the subsidy left, it calls for more questioning, looking at the majority of the populace who are the victims of the subsidy removal. If you factor in more than 500% increment of the previous price of the pump price for PMS compared to what it is now, you find out that a lot of people are under agony. People are going through a lot because there was no palliative initially, and the government are telling us that this subsidy has to go, that it was never captured in the supplementary budget for 2023.
As a journalist, how have you fared in the past 6 days in terms of getting around, moving about across the country to get your stories, to file your reports in? How has it affected you personally as well as in your work?
Actually, it has not been, mobility has not been an issue, but you find out that the PMS increment has affected virtually the cost of goods and services gradually, which we see in our day-to-day lifestyle. And by so doing, it has affected people's disposable income. You find out that a lot of the people, Nigerians at the bottom of the pyramid, are people who earn little. And by the increment, people's salaries, income, whether you are doing business, whether they are in the private or informal sector, is being threatened. And these are some of the challenges the masses have been crying out. They will have been palliative, like maybe cushioning the effect of the subsidy removal, because globally, all over the world, even in the US, there is still subsidy for petroleum. Even they subsidize even staple food like bread
so
in some
we'll come
countries.
back to that aspect of cushioning the effect of the removal of subsidy. But I would like for our guests joining us virtually, Adekunle Olopade, are you there now?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I would like to know how it has been for you in the past 1 week of this new administration. How have you been personally affected by, say, the removal of fuel subsidy?
For lack of a better word, I would say it was something I anticipated. So on the 28th of May, I went to the filling station and I stocked up on petrol because if memory serves me correct, we've had the issue of fuel scarcity for almost a year now. I remember early last year, just before we went into the Big Brother house, there was fuel scarcity. We came out of the house, there's still fuel scarcity. And now there's a new administration, and it's not as though that there's scarcity, but then the access to petrol is completely difficult. And when you think about it, well, I live on the island in Lagos, and most of the cars you see around are SUVs and Jeeps and big cars. It would pertain to people who are able to afford it regardless of the price hike. But on the flip side, there's a larger population of people who are within a lower socioeconomic class, and they rely on public transportation. At the end of the day, if you go by almost every bus stop on the island, you see the influx of people who are waiting for public transport to get home, most times at odd hours. So you can imagine when we don't have enough public transportation system, you have people who are relying on the fuel that we have, and those fuel are piled up at the filling station.
So I would like to just come in there, Adekunle. You were prepared, and I know some people were also of that opinion that there's a fuel scarcity looming, let me go fill my tank. But when your tank definitely runs out of fuel, it'll be interesting to get your views on how else you can prepare maybe your wallet this time for that increment. I'd like to move to Ifeanyi. In our earlier conversation before the break, we're looking at accountability. Now, in holding this government accountable, on the one hand, you said it's too early, but already we're seeing the effects of the removal of subsidy. And what you kept saying was, where is this cushioning effect? How can we engage government to tell us what exactly should we expect when they say they are providing some kind of palliative or some kind of cushioning effect? Are we going to see maybe subsidization of the transport fares? Is there a data bank where they can go and check who needs this palliative measures? How can we get those answers?
I think the palliative, like cushioning effect, I don't think they could get an actual statistics or data of people who need the palliative. But on the lower class, the mass population of the Nigerians are at the receiving end. The palliative they could give from a point of sincerity, if the government are willing. We've seen over time where they told us they are bringing in palliative. At the end of the day, it couldn't be justified. So we hope it will not turn out such this time around. Palliative in the sense that maybe the government could provide its rapid bus transmit, like the BRT we have in Lagos, make the fares a subsidized one for the masses.
When you say for the masses, if I have my Cowrie card here in Lagos State, how will the person know that they are giving me a subsidized fare, and if I qualify for this subsidy? Won't it end up being a subsidy that covers all the people that use that form of transportation?
Well, there is no segregation when it comes to the cushioning effect.
So everybody should receive.
Everybody should receive equal measure, because in the long run, you find out that, let me say, the local commuters or maybe the Uber, their fare goes astronomically high compared to what is being expected of them before the increase. Then the government vehicles or BRT buses gives a very cheap fare, maybe a 50% slash, and that makes it reasonable.
Okay. Some would even argue that maybe we should explore other modes of transportation that do not require the fuel, and also maybe begin to look at maybe work from home policies. I would like to get your view, Adekunle, as to what you're expecting from this new administration. When they say renewed hope, how does that translate to you as a reality TV star, as someone in the media space? What does renewed hope mean to you?
Hope is a very expensive commodity, and we've gone through it in the past couple of years. I say between 8 to the last 14 years. And I personally would say I am very skeptical. I have very little hope to give, but I know quite a number of people don't share the same mindset as I do. In terms of renewed hope, as the other speaker had said earlier on, it is too early to judge this current administration. But with the antecedent that they've set up in the first week that they've assumed office, it would let us know if this is actually a government that does care about the people, or they just want to continue what the previous administrations have done, which is to carry out laws and, make policies that only benefit them. Because if everybody's being very factual, this decision that was made very abruptly on Inauguration Day, it is affecting everybody, regardless of the tier or the arm of government that you support. And it's only if people don't want to be completely honest, they will say that this was a good idea. Yes, maybe the idea of subsidy needed to be removed, but the way with which it was done was not properly executed. In terms of renewed hope, I can say that it's too soon to tell. We should wait and see. Sadly, there's really nothing we can do. If the government decides not to go back on the decision, we are at the foot end of it and would only live to endure it as we've been doing in the last couple of years.
So just like you said that it's too early to tell, but nonetheless, I believe that accountability is something that will really drive that sense of an inclusive government. How else can President Bola Tinubu really get that uniting spirit, unify Nigerians across different political parties or affiliations to come together for the good of Nigeria? What can the president do in the first 2 weeks, 3 weeks to really show that this is an inclusive administration?
Yeah, there should be sincerity of purpose. Campaigns are over, in as much as we saw the despicable act and all manner of campaign of calumny exhibited by the present party. I think it's time they should face governance from a point of being sincere and knowing that governance is a contract between the people governed and they the few elected ones. So when we talk of what people expect from him, I believe in weeks to come, at least like some of the promises he made on the day of his inauguration, he talked about the power, he talked about healthcare, he talked about infrastructure, he talked about tackling corruption, he talked about the foreign exchange rate, he talked about removing the multiple foreign exchange rates, looking at taxation, and also uniting the country as one, fighting insecurity. So some of these things are what we tend to look out as day goes by. How sincere are they to pursue some of these issues? Because we don't want business as usual, what we've seen from his predecessor and him being a successor. So it's too early, but I know people are anxious. People want to see, are they really sincere of what they say? And the kind of appointment he makes again is another factor to judge if truly he wants to move from the status quo remain same.
So the composition of his cabinet can show really his commitment to running an inclusive government. I would like you to weigh in on that, Adekunle. What will you be expecting to see in his cabinet composition? What kind of people will you believe, when you see them, will you believe that, yes, this is an inclusive government and this is a government like the president has come out to say that he's not going to rule over us. So it's more about this I would say collective leadership.
To be very honest, what I think is, I'd say within the past 1 year or past 2 years, what we have is we have more, I say a lot of younger people are now interested in Nigerian politics. A few of the appointments that we've seen are people who most are not familiar with. It will be difficult to say these are the type of people that we expect in the president's new administration because everybody would have a track record, but not everybody who is now conversant with the Nigerian political system would be conversant with their track record. In terms of transparency and fairness, I'd say the president's media team or the federal government's media team has a key role in playing. What we've been used to over the past couple of years is we have the people who work in governance always come up with excuses and lies, and they try to cushion up mistakes that they've made. If this new administration actually does own up to their mistakes and then they try to set in place measures, and to be very honest, try to be fair, I don't think government or politics or people should be run by you trying to outsmart the citizen or the people who you've said you wanted to govern. Everybody's paying attention and everybody can see. What will eventually happen if you do continue to lie is the renewed hope that was promised during the campaign and inauguration will no longer be there. And everybody will just wait for your 4 years to be over and then we just go on with business as usual.
Okay, I'll move to the issue again on representation, because we know that democracy is government by the people, of the people, for the people. Now, in a country where half of the population are women, what should this government be doing? Should they be exploring, say, affirmative action in ensuring that women hold key positions in government? And then when you're looking beyond even the issue of women, let's look at religion. We know that we have a president and vice president of the same religion. Should we be expecting maybe key positions within the National Assembly to be held by Christians? And also the issue of diversity when it comes to people living with disabilities. So I'd like you to weigh in on that when we're saying we have a representative government and a representative governance.
I think the issue of affirmative action, bringing more women in politics, is a welcome development. And I think politics of today should be all inclusive. It shouldn't be winner take it all, because there is more just to that 4 years. You should be bequeathing a legacy to the next or coming generation. So more roles should be given to women who have distinguished themselves. It shouldn't be a situation of, oh, because I'm a woman, but it should be within the woman flux, the competent hands, people who have walked their talk over time. They should be given such opportunity. That's what I mean. looking at the issue of having a representative government as regards the issue of religion, whether the Christians should take all. Like most people who always advocate, the best or the most competent person should be given such position, irrespective of religion. But I disagree, because today Nigeria is going through one of the most and worst scenario that has to do with religious intolerance. And we are second globally in the world ranking as regard what is happening in the northeast and northwest.
So we cannot afford to just give it to the best people for the jobs without paying attention to the religious background.
That's not what I mean. People might...
Okay, I'd like you to hold on to that thought. We need to go on a quick break. Please join us again when Rubbin Minds returns.
Wanna get with you. Don't just stand there teasing me. Now it's time to show and prove.
Welcome back to Rubbin Minds. Now, before the break, we were getting the views of Nigerians who have gone through at least 6 days of a new administration under President Bola Tinubu. We've looked at the removal of fuel subsidy, but also looked at some of the promises that have been made by President Tinubu during his inauguration speech and how we can begin to hold this government accountable. Before the break, I was discussing about running a representative government where we're seeing women, people living with disabilities, people of different religions being represented in government through the composition of the cabinet and holding of key political positions. I would like you, Adekule, to weigh in on that. What should this government be doing to ensure that it's inclusive? Are we looking at, say, in terms of numbers, in percentages, how many women should we see? What kind of positions? People living with disability, how do we balance? We all know about federal charter, that not one particular ethnic group is overly represented. How do we balance the needs for representation that's inclusive, but still ensure that we have a meritocratic government?
I don't want to believe that the only people who are qualified for certain job roles or positions would only come from one geopolitical zone or one tribe or one religion. I do believe that if this current administration is genuine and sincere about equity, equality, and balance, it is something that they can strive for. We have more women who are competent across the country who can fill in certain roles. A lot of people have said that this current president has a track record of empowering people and being able to identify talent. I genuinely feel that between now and when it is time for him to make the formal announcement and declaration of ministers, commissioners, and people to hold office in this cabinet, people with disabilities, regardless of the ethnic background and tribalism, because that was something that plagued the nation during the entire campaign period, especially women. I don't believe that Nigeria cannot run or function if women are in charge. I think this current administration will set a great antecedent for itself if it does start off by giving more women adequate representation in public offices. I mean, as most of us know, we all know that women
Adekule, go on. I was struggling to hear you there. We'll come back to you, but I'd like you to share your expectation from this government. What is that one thing that you're expecting in the short term that this administration should deliver for you to believe that, yes, that renewed hope is definitely what we're going to see in the next 4 years?
One of the first and shortest thing, which I doubt if it's possible over time, is first and foremost to tackle drastically and reduce waste in governance. That is one. Secondly, the issue of insecurity. Nigeria has spent over 10 trillion since 2015. If they can tackle those insecurity with not just manpower, using tech and other AI aspects and reducing the death toll of people there and saving costs. Then thirdly, creating a kind of intervention fund to reduce the pool of unemployment, whereby making fund available to young people with single interest digits and a duration of maybe 5 years payment plan, and creating all the whole necessary to allow small businesses thrive. By doing so, you are taking people out of poverty.
So these short-term gains, you believe, will really send the right direction to Nigerians, that this is a government that is committed to creating jobs, reducing unemployment, and also raising people out of poverty. Over to you, Adekunle. What is, in the short term, what is that one thing or several things, like our guest here has said, that you're expecting this government to deliver if we are to all believe in this renewed hope?
I'd like to think that the government should primarily focus on segmenting the problem Nigeria has. We have a mammoth of problems in this nation, and if we decide to say we want to tackle everything as a whole, we wouldn't go anywhere. But the one thing that plagues us now is the issue of unemployment. There are so many things that need to be done in the country. And I think if the government is able to pay attention to that, I do not believe that the federal government does have the sole responsibility of identifying and solving every problem, which is why we have other tiers in government and then the delegates, so that those tiers can take it up. If, for example, within a local community now, if we're able to get the statistics of unemployment there and there are resources, there are jobs that need to be done within the community, it would make more sense if the people within that particular community are the people who are outsourced to fill the job. That way we've been able to close the unemployment gap, as well as underemployment. Something about the education system needs to be checked in almost immediately. We have a lot of farmers. This is me moving into the agricultural sector as well. We have a lot of farmers who have the skill, but they don't have the resources and the empowerment needed. The government needs to be able to fix into that as well. And then as well as healthcare, the living in Nigeria is difficult on its own. There are so many ways, but generally on the short run, I think the government actually needs to segment all these issues individually and almost immediately putting plans in place to make sure all that is sorted out. But tackling the major issues such as subsidy, that's a long fight that it might take a while. But almost immediately, unemployment, inflation rate, the food and agricultural sector, health sector as well. Those are things that I think can easily be tackled by providing jobs for the Nigerians we have that have the skills to make it work, because the nation's wealth is with the people, and the federal government and Nigeria need to put more power in the human capital. We genuinely and almost immediately, as quickly as yesterday, need to empower the Nigerians that we have, because Nigerians are leaving the country, which means they have something to offer. So we need to look inward to be able to solve our nation's problem.
Yes, to definitely stem that phenomenon of Japa, there will be a need for increased investment in human capital development and making things more attractive so that our brightest minds don't continue to seek better fortunes off the shores of this country. Now, do you believe that Nigeria is fixable in 4 years? Is that a tall order? Can this administration deliver on bringing Nigeria on the path of greatness, or are some things just going to be left to time?
I won't agree some things will be left to time, but gradually the place of fixing the debt in infrastructure, the rotting system in the civil service, the low patronage and low morale of the citizen in governance, I think the process can start. And it's not going to be a 4 years process, but sincerity and genuinity of purpose can lay down the foundation over time and build a strong institutions and system that whoever comes after will be able to see a roadmap and go through it. Because Nigeria is battered from every angle, not just in terms of the infrastructure, human capital development, the healthcare system, and
so it's the priority to set a good foundation that can be built on. Very quickly, before we close the show, Adekunle, do you believe that Nigeria's problems can be fixed in 4 years, or is that too big or too tall a dream?
I think some problems can be solved within an allocated period of time. Nigeria as a whole, I'm not certain that we would ever run out of problems. But if we're able to identify some of the issues, and as I said, priority, once we're able to identify that, I think some of the problems can be tackled. Ghost workers, lack of morale within the civil service, enthusiasm of people believing in governance, people believing in the media as well. I think some of those are some things that can be tackled. Infrastructure, maybe within a couple of years, as long as it's not an elephant project. But Nigeria as a nation we would gradually need to build. We would gradually need to make sure things work, because nothing lasts forever. The more you fix something, the more other things would rot. So it's a continuous process.
Thank you very much, Adekunle Olopade, a media personality and reality star, for your contributions on Rubbin Minds. And thank you to you also, Ifeanyi Okoye, a journalist, for your contributions.
Thank you very much.
Indeed, there is a long list of issues to be tackled by this new administration. But as our guests have said, there needs to be priority on things like security, education, the creation of jobs, and really the sincerity of purpose. My name is Isabella Adejiji. Thank you for joining us on Rubbin Minds. Join us again next week. Goodbye.